So let's start that again. Since we started recording, my apologies. As I just stated, supplier selection is probably one of the most critical activities that you can take, and you should take the necessary time to do it as opposed to rush through it. A decision now will pay dividends for you for many, many years to come, or it will punish you for many, many years to come. A simple reason that even if you select a poor supplier or a poor performing supplier now, because cost is the best, then you have to be willing to accept the challenges that come with that. In many cases, a supplier who is the best in class price-wise today will put tremendous pressure on you to increase your price in the coming months and years, because he knows he has probably lowballed the quote to get the business, and it's his full-time job now to get that price back up to where he thinks it should be so that he can make money. In the event he doesn't make money, ultimately he'll come to you and say, I'm sorry, I no longer can do your business. And then that necessitates you to make a change, which is considerable depending on the product line that you've got. If it's a product line that requires safety testing, then you have to go through all your safety testing again, because it was tested under the supplier's capability. And if you change that to a new supplier, you would then have to retest in order to meet the national safety requirements. So be very careful as you make this decision. Last week we talked about the first 18 slides of the PowerPoints, talking about selection evaluation. We're talking about, when we might do things, impact of strategy, and I'll go through just a couple of them as a refresher, because I think it is important that we get those. So let me pick just a couple of slides as we get through it, and then we'll start to go on with the lecture. The basis for this half of the lecture is how do we develop a tool or form or format in order to evaluate suppliers. I'm going to give you an example today, and there's an example in the slides, but I'll give you an example I created this morning once I returned from my initial dog sleigh trip to Toronto, and realized it was almost impossible. But when I look at the supply criteria, selection criteria, it really is up to you, the buyer, as to how you do this. But as I said to you last week, it is important that you are consistent, and consistent meaning that you apply the same process to your significant sourcing decisions. You cannot do every sourcing decision the same way, because 50% of what you will buy is insignificant in the big scheme of things. Yes, it's important to the running of the business, but it's not a sourcing of a part or a service that is critical to your customer, such as any MRO supplies for your facility. Those are the supplies required to keep your plant or your office running. Photocopy paper, toilet paper, cleaners, electrical stuff, maintenance, etc. That is not, you would not necessarily go through a selection process evaluation for something that does not impact your supply, your customer. But if it does impact your supplier, you're looking at your top 20% of your products, your biggest impact ones, your most complex ones, the ones that really control your relationship with your supplier. You cannot do every part. It's just not feasible, given that in a car or a piece of electronics, there could be 500 different working parts. In a car, there's 2,500 working parts, so it's impossible to do every part. But we might make those sourcing decisions on every major component, a major subsystem. In your course documents, there is the Honda sourcing sourcing document. I will bring that up this morning and talk about it again, because that is this in a simplistic form, all in one piece of paper, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, is or one slide is the information that we can make a very critical decision on, and all the information that we need is there. And it's a bit complicated because there's a lot of information there, but it's everything that I would need to make as an evaluator to decide whether company A gets a business or company B. Okay, and that is what we use consistently for that. Therefore, every time a buyer comes for this sourcing discussion, then we use this document to talk to. Consistent, everybody does it. Some people can fill it out better than others. Some people are more complete. but the better that you can look at your sourcing selection, the better it is for everyone. Okay, so that's important for us. And I'll take you through just some of those slides if I can. We talked about what the process, the supplier selection process might be, and recognizing the need, etc., etc. And again, I don't need you to memorize this flow, but essentially as you go through here, when you come to identifying your potential suppliers, then again, I always want you to consider first and foremost your existing suppliers. Do I have a supplier in-house in my list, my supplier list, that is capable of doing this job? And that is a responsibility that you as a buyer must have. I need to give you access to that slide. And you should be able to see, I think, now your PowerPoint slides. So down slide 4, this is what I'm talking about, is you need to limit your supplier selection pool and identify your potential suppliers. This simply means if you've got them in-house, please consider and use them. You do not need to put a new supplier in place every time that you want to make a major sourcing decision. In fact, it's detrimental for you to do that, because you now have to re-qualify and spend countless months trying to prove that the supplier is a good supplier when most likely your good supplier is already in-house or connected to your organization, and that is who you should be using. The reason I say that is they make a commitment to support your production or your service requirements. You, as a buyer and as a company, need to make a commitment to them that they will grow with you, and in return for their loyalty and their dedication and their good ideas and their opportunities to make a better product, you need to be able to show them that you are willing to give them more business. To use a company in Windsor called Fleetwood Metals, they started with Honda on a small Acura Civic type car, very low volume, very limited risk that we put out there, but essentially that business is worth about $35,000 a year to them. Absolutely nothing in the big picture of things. They accepted that. They accepted that business with the struggles of dealing with a customer such as Honda. They're a very, very difficult customer, not from a fighting with supplier, but we demand a lot of information. We demand a lot of improvements. We demand a lot of attention, because that's what makes Honda and Toyota good. You seen Toyota last week, or 2 weeks ago now. You seen Toyota, and just last week, yeah. And what you seen there was a very skilled, gifted company. So as a customer, when you see them at that level, you must be able to extrapolate the thought process. What are they looking for in a supplier? And what we look for in partners in business, and what we look for in partners in life, and what we look for for suppliers is people who are capable like us, or have the same idealistic viewpoint to things. How do they do the quality control? Do they do quality control? Are they committed to quality as we are? Are they committed to cost improvements? Are they committed to general improvements? Are they committed to reducing the turnover? What does that supplier's face look like to you as a customer? And most likely, most customers want them to be similar to what they are, because that's what they're most comfortable with. Okay, so if you were now a buyer for Toyota, you can imagine going to look for a new supplier. You would have to make sure that supplier is very capable, because your company is very capable. And therefore, when you look at your list of suppliers, your potential suppliers are most likely in-house, already qualified, already giving you business, unless for some reason you don't want to use someone in-house. So, but even then, you need to limit your suppliers. There is 100 suppliers out there that claim they can do anything for you better than your previous supplier, better than the next supplier. They may be able to. Your job is to get down to a decision of 3 or 4 people, 2 or 3 new people potentially. You need to get it down to a manageable number, and you can do that by various methods. And today I'll show you a method to do that. But it is important that you use the same method so it is consistent, that anybody who picks up your sourcing document 2 years from now can see the logic that you went through to get that information. Okay, so it's very important. And Thanks, Izzy. I appreciate you saying that. Let me just see what happens. Um, why am I not?
I see two different screens. I see a PowerPoint with kind of blocked out, and then I see on the right side, I see the actual slide, which is the supplier selection and evaluation. I'm not sure what Izzy sees.
Okay, hold on a second. Just let me. My apologies. It's this one here that's causing my headache. Shit.
It just right before a couple seconds ago, it showed up on the first slide on the left side.
Right.
Now it blocked out again. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
It's back.
All right. So you should be again. Let me. My apologies. I had too many screens open there. Thanks for telling me that because I wouldn't know otherwise. Oh, I know why. Okay. Okay. Hold on, I'm going to come back. Hold on, I'm going to just change out the PowerPoint here. I'm going to bring that up and bring it back up again. Hold on, guys, my apologies. All right, can you see that now?
I don't see anything on the screen.
Okay, you should now. Okay. Let me know when you can see that.
It's loading.
Okay, all right, thank you. I had it in presenter view, which means I can see what I can see and you see nothing.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, so again, we're still good to go. This is a slide I think we're looking at. We need to make sure we do limit that. It is important that you limit it. Okay, as you go through your evaluation selection criteria, we talked about when you would do this, new product, new this, new that. It's important you read these slides because you don't need to make a new selection every time somebody burps at you, so every time someone thinks they need a new supplier. Part of your job is to make sure that doesn't happen because everybody has their own favorites in engineering and in quality and manufacturing. You need to help guide that process to maintain a minimum number of suppliers and not just keeping adding suppliers. The more suppliers you add to a specific commodity, the more you dilute the value to them and to you. Which means if you have $10 million to spend on stampings and you've got 10 suppliers, you're averaging $1 million a piece. Much better to have 3 suppliers and give somebody 5 million, somebody 3 million, and somebody 2 million. The only two friends you've got in business, remember, is volume and competition. You want competition. We don't like monopolies. So you want competition and you want to give them volume. The more volume you can give a supplier, the least cost that they can give you back. And that is just primarily because they've got power in purchasing more materials. They've got more volume to put overhead against, so it can make things less. So the more volume you give a supplier, the less expensive they should become to you. So don't have 10 suppliers for a commodity. Have 2 or 3. Okay, but make sure that you as purchasing control that. All right, and you can through and find that. When you're talking about sourcing requirements, what are you looking for? And this is maybe determined by internal and external customers, and it may very well be because your customer may dictate to you the level of supplier that you have to use. If that's the case, then you have to comply. Okay, so you may bring a supplier in that you don't use. Also, as a customer can direct you to use a specific supplier. So, Mr. Phillips, you are given this business and you will use Magnet International as your source. And then that kind of takes something out of our hands as a supplier. But the fact that your customer is directed to use a specific supplier, you have no choice or you will not get the business. So, and in most cases, they will look for some evaluation. Your customer doesn't, but your customer, the OEM customer or your end customer does not need to know who your suppliers are, in the sense that they need to know who the supplier is for record keeping purposes, for warranty purposes, for quality purposes. What they don't need to go through is how you selected that supplier. It's your responsibility. They're your supplier. You take the ultimate responsibility. Therefore, you'll do that. I've already stressed to you the need to use QCDD on everything that you do. And I say just about everything you do, because it just gives you a 4-angle view of something, better than just one view. And that goes with a cross-functional team, and they should be part of that discussion on how to select them. So I use the concept of QCDD as Toyota does, as Honda does, as most of the contemporary companies do. Many of us use management as a criteria, and we look at financial risk. The supplier could be a great looking company, but there's a significant financial risk. Then what's the point of being great if they're going to go out of business in 6 months? So it's important that you use every tool in your toolkit to make the right decisions. And if you do that with a good level of analysis, you'll be happy with your result. Okay. This slide here we used last week. I don't like it. I think it's misleading. I think we should just delete it, and we will. Okay. Your source information, you can get it from anywhere just now. Sources themselves, again, your sourcing alternatives. You as purchasing don't make the decision whether it's in-house made or outsourced. It's not your decision. That's a corporate decision that will come to you and say, we're currently making this part or this process or this service. We no longer want to do this because it's not our mandate anymore. I want you to find someone to do it. That's called outsourcing. It's taking it from a current part in-house and taking it out-house, not to the outhouse, outside. That's called outsourcing. Okay. Whether you source that to locally, whether you source that to a domestic supplier, meaning a North American supplier, or whether you source that to a offshore supplier such as China or India or Thailand, is part of your evaluation criteria, because the further away from home you are to get those parts, the more complicated your supply chain becomes, and you need to take that into consideration as you do that. Okay. Again, financial risk. Dun & Brad is a very, very inexpensive business tool. They will evaluate all public suppliers. They will tell you when they're breaking the thresholds for certain criteria, control limits, etc. It's a very good thing to do, and quite honestly, Dun & Brad has probably saved the likes of Honda and Toyota millions, if not billions of dollars in disruptions because of an early forecast system that says, we believe this supplier is in financial distress, you need to address it. Dun & Brad won't address it with them. It's not their job to do that. They're an accounting group, a finance group, but they will tell you well in advance, we think this supplier is showing trends to have a financial meltdown. Go see about it and see if you can fix it. And that's prudent because you can actually most times help them and avoid the bankruptcy situation. You do not want to go to bankruptcy if at all that you can stay away from it. So anybody's close to it, you need to either build a protection plan or a backup plan, or you need to help manage them out of the situation. It is in your best interest to keep them out of bankruptcy, because as I stated last week, a bankruptcy means that they will lock the door of that supplier. Your assets, your raw material, your finished goods, your work in process that's inside that plant is not available to you because it doesn't belong to you because you haven't paid for it. Okay, it belongs to the shareholders of that company, and once the receiver goes into place, his job is to make sure the shareholders get the best value for their money. Okay, so very important to have financial risk in it, and this is where your accounting group should come in to help you. It is not our job to evaluate financially; it's their job. It's our job to ask for it and make sure they can do that. But let's make sure that you get an idea about that. And later on the slides, there's 2 slides. It's got the main financial summaries on it, or formulas that you should be looking for, and you can just become knowledgeable on that, but you don't need to do it. Okay. Suppliers evaluation, QCD, management, employee capabilities, etc. Important that you kind of recognize this, do that. Environmental regulations, very important, because we all have to comply. And the logical thing is, unless they're a very unique company, their environmental requirements are going to be very similar to you if they're a Canadian company. If it's a US company, the environmental rules are a little bit different, but very similar. But when you go offshore, the environmental restrictions on companies in third world countries such as Thailand, China, India are far, far different than North America. Okay, so it's important that you understand the financial risks, and if there is a risk, you take it into account as you make your decisions. Sometimes I've made the comment, sometimes I like to look at QCDD with a small m at the end, meaning M is for management. As you evaluate the company and you see they're capable of making good parts and they've got good quality and they've got a good delivery history, most likely they're a good management team. But I don't want you to assume they've got a good management team. You need to look at what the management practices are. And that's part of your job as the purchaser, specifically as a buyer. You need to get to know your supplier so that you are comfortable with what they can do for you. Okay. We talk about turnover on this slide, management turnover. It's one thing to have a high turnover in a plant. It is even more concerning if you have a high turnover in management, because what you may end up there is a private company with an owner, and you may have an owner that's very difficult to deal with and work with, that people don't want to work with him. And so they're there for 6 months a year, then he forces them to leave. Donald Trump might be a good example of a difficult owner, meaning he is very strong individually, very demanding as an individual. Therefore, you can imagine working for Donald Trump, that may not be easy. And even as President of the United States, you can see that the number of people who leave his staff are exceedingly high compared to other administrations. So why is that important to you? Not Donald Trump, but why is a difficult owner important to you? Because ultimately it's going to impact you. And what you need to make sure you've got consistency and stability in your plant and in your offices. Not your offices, in your suppliers' offices. And do not be afraid to ask the very pointed questions. Why did the director of finance leave? Why did you change your operation managers 3 times in the last 4 years? You have to determine what the problem is there, because it will ultimately hurt you. Because every time you change a key role or key person, companies go into a tailspin. And it may only be temporarily, but they will go into a tailspin. For example, to change it, just the inventory control manager. If an inventory control manager leaves and a new person was in, he's got a different idea, or she may have a different idea on what to do and what not to do. You need to ensure you've got the right controls in place and the right inventory levels that keep your business running. You want to minimize them, of course, but you still need some inventory. It's very rare to have a no inventory situation, and that would be really quite unacceptable in any business. You need to have protection somewhere within reason, and you should find a way what that stress level is. Okay, are the managers professional? And I want you to be cautious here, and I don't mean to knock academics, and it's not the case. Just because somebody is an MBA does not mean he can manage a business. It says that anybody with a degree or a master's degree or a PhD has got an advanced level of education, can think in a conceptual level, and should, given the skills, the education they have, should be able to manage a business properly. In many cases, they can't. So again, you need to understand what is the criteria here, what am I looking for, and does the results of the company back up what we should be seeing? And if they are not in sync, you have to go to the results of the company as your fallback position. Take that for example, because those are based on examples. Those are based on actuals. If they say they've got a 73% on-time delivery performance, it is 73% most likely, which means 25% of the time they're going to miss ship you. You're going to be late. You're going to have missing stuff, etc., etc. So those numbers are very important. Is 100% shipping performance feasible? Absolutely it is. Is a zero defect quality, feasible? Absolutely. Is it common? No. But it is feasible. It can be done with the right controls and should be done, and particularly on delivery history, because you're saying, ship me what I order as I need 1,000 parts daily. You should get 1,000 parts daily, not 1,010, not 980. You should get 1,000 good parts every day. So it's not unreasonable to expect that, and you should continue to push for perfect results. And you can get perfect results. BorgWarner, as explained, is a company who does four-wheel drive systems, had zero defects in 6 or 7 years that I was involved with them. Zero defects, 100% on-time performance with no quality issues whatsoever. It is feasible, it is doable with the right controls. Insist on it. Okay. You can look at different things. You can read through. These are where we dropped off last week, but let me go back and look at management capabilities. Do they practice long-range planning? Again, you should have a document that asks some specific questions. In fact, I can give you a document that Honda uses. We use a document that is probably 30 pages long that essentially asks about 20 questions per discipline, to inventory control, to warehousing, to manufacturing, to quality, to HR, to purchasing, to general managers. And those 20 questions in each category are meant to help us evaluate what is the true capability of a company. Okay. Good people in the plant need good managers above them to help with the planning, etc., etc. Okay, so it's important that you do that. And again, look for turnover. It's your first indicator of a problem is turnover. Okay, does the organization have a vision? And again, in North America, we tend to like to put plaques on walls or posters on walls that saying, we are committed to teamwork, and it shows you some idyllic picture of a teamwork. And then many times, if you ask the person on the plant floor, I see that you have lots of teamwork and leadership capability here based on your posters. They would tell you that's exactly what they are. They are posters on the wall to make it look good, to give you an impression that you're doing something different. In reality, most companies are not. And a lot of companies are not. Okay, so be careful when you go into a beautiful office and everything is just exactly right, and there's beautiful pictures of commitment and slogans for this and this and that. You want to prove those are true based on fact. Okay, all right. The bottom line here talks about the organizations making necessary capital investments. How much do you invest on as part of your profits? How much do you reinvest in your company as part of your profits? And let's just say a company makes $10 million profit. One should expect them to be reinvesting maybe 10%, 15% annually, 20% annually back into their company to keep it moving forward. Again, what's an acceptable number? It depends on the business you're in. Some businesses are not capital intensive, but if they're not investing in their own organization, why should you invest in it? And you have to think about that, because ultimately, what they do with a company is going to impact you or not. Okay. Can you face competitive challenges? Everybody says you can. It's part of your job to make sure they can, because we want to make sure that they've got the ability to control the cost. They've got the ability to look for new ideas, the ability to try and do continuous improvement, etc., etc. Okay. If they're not doing those things now, be careful when a company says, oh no, we can do that. We don't do it now, but we can do it. Be very cautious with that, because yes, they can. Whether they will or not, that's a different story. So again, do not be naive to think that a company, when they say they'll do something, will do it. In most cases, they hope to do it. And you're talking to a manager who says, we can get this done. Yes, we can do this. It depends what their ownership group says, or the shareholders say, or their board of directors, or their owner. What did they say? Are they willing to do what the manager says? Remember, the manager is a middle or a person in the middle of the organization, may not be in tune with what is happening in the boardroom. So be very cautious and don't be skeptical, but I want you always to dig deeper with that second and third question. Can you show me what your record is? Can you show me how you'll do that? How will you accomplish that commitment? Okay. If they don't know, then they may put it in place, but just be aware. And that's where your plan, do, check, act type of planning come into place. Is you expect a supplier to improve themselves in these three areas. Make a plan with them. Follow the plan as you're doing now with your own studies, and you will see whether they're making progress or not. And if they're not, you need to react to it. Exactly what you're doing in your assignment now is what you can do to help a company get better. Okay. Employee capability. The degrees of commitment to quality and continuous improvement. I want you to visit your supplier. I want you to walk the plant floor. I want you to understand who they are, what they do, and I want you to talk to people on the floor. If a supplier says you cannot talk to someone on the floor, that should be a huge red flag waving in front of you. Why don't you want me to talk to an employee? And they'll say, well, you don't want to distract them from the job. That's a bullshit answer. You should go to the floor, you should walk the floor, you should talk to them. In general capabilities, you all use your eyes when you went to Amazon, and every student said at Amazon, those people were not happy. By comparison, you said the people at Toyota were much more engaged, much more enthusiastic, and looked happier in their jobs. You've seen by your eyes. You don't need to be a PhD in human resources to see that. You've seen it as a student, and you could recognize the difference. That's what you need to learn to do, and that's if anything you take out of these plant tours, is you can use your eyes to determine a lot about a company, and then ask the right questions. Okay. The overall skills and abilities, on the employee on the floor doing your basic job, is, are they skilled in the basic function of quality control? Are they skilled in record keeping? Are they able to make good parts? And what are their checks? What are the gauges, etc., etc.? Very important for you to do that, because ultimately the person who's making your part or doing your service on your equipment, ultimately they are the company, and they will either make or break you. And at the same time, yes, the managers definitely help, but the person making the job, they are the true expert in the process. So I think it's important to look at that. Worker flexibility. You've seen that again at Amazon, the lack of flexibility, which we perceive as a lack of flexibility, because they're mundane jobs and doing the same repetitive job over and over and over again, compared to a Toyota. And I can assure you, they have a flexible workforce, and most likely they rotate the people every hour, every couple of hours into a different job. It may be a related job, but it will be a different job. And therefore, worker flexibility is important, because I can tell you at Honda, our plant workers or production line associates know about 64 different processes, about 60 to 64 different processes when they're highly skilled, fully trained, which means we can use them in any one of those 64 different roles if we have to. And that is what makes a difference. Again, worker flexibility is important because people get sick, snowstorms happen, people have highways shut down, and when that happens, you need to continue to produce your parts for your customer. You've seen Toyota building, I think one of the students mentioned that the takt time of a Toyota is 70.5 seconds, which means a car rolls off their assembly line completely every 70 seconds. It doesn't take 70 seconds to make a car, it takes 24 hours to make a car, but every 70 seconds, based on takt time, that car rolls off the line. You can imagine what would happen to Toyota today if we get 30 centimeters of snow that they're anticipating. I doubt it'll be that, but that will cause them havoc in getting their parts in and getting the employees in to do their job. And most likely for today and tomorrow, Toyota will need to adjust their workforce because 20% of the people won't make it in because of weather. So when you lose 20% of your workforce, you need to make adjustments, because you still have to make 1,000 cars a day, because that is your commitment to your customers. And so they will have to find a way to do that. And they won't make 1,000 cars today. They may only make 700. But then over the next week, they will try to build up that 300 they lost today over the next 2 or 3 days, 4 days to get them back to normal. So worker flexibility pays off in dividends when you have an emergency situation like London is having now with 30 centimeters of snow. That is when worker flexibility comes into play. I don't know if anybody asked the question, and answer me if anybody did. Last week in Toyota, what is their turnover? What is their plant turnover of plant personnel? And I would bet you it's below 1%, 1 to 2% maybe. I don't know if they mentioned that, but I think it's extremely low. And it is because they're a good company, they pay well, it's an interesting job for people, and the company treats their employees well. Their turnover should be very low indeed. Okay? And again, are they willing to contribute to improving their operations? If anybody tells you that their process has been optimized and that's the best they can do, it means that they really don't want to help you improve, because you could always improve your process. It may not be easy, but you can improve it. Okay, and they need to be willing to do it, because if they're not willing to do it, there's no chance of them even looking for it, and you will not get planned savings every year. In fact, you'll be getting very quickly price increases or requests for price increases, because they will quote economics is changed. The cost of steel has been up by 10%, therefore I should get 10% more in my price on my part. Honda's position, Toyota's position is always the same. If you're asking for a 10% increase because of material increases, tell me what you've done to offset that increases through process improvements. That is how we run our businesses. We do it internally. The supplier needs to do the same thing. So that's when I said you want the supplier to be like you. If your supplier can emulate your condition, your willingness to go for cost improvements, they should be able to do it themselves. So it's very difficult, but you need to be willing to do it. If you're not, then that's unfortunate. Yeah. When you talk costs, and we'll do an exercise where I'll show you costs, and I want you to think about that, because you need to understand the total landed cost. And I say total landed cost because it's a new term, because landed means it's coming from overseas and it is landed here in Canada at my facility. What is the cost to get that part from the plant that makes it to my plant to assemble it? And you will see overseas costs are much cheaper, much less expensive, but you have to add a transportation cost and a quality cost potentially to that, warehousing cost, consolidation center costs, before you compare apple to apple. So you're looking at labor costs, direct labor costs. Indirect labor is the supporting staff in your plant. It is the people inside your offices. Your material costs, your manufacturing costs, your overhead costs. All those things come into the part and have to be part of that. You should understand what those numbers are. Should the supplier share them with you? Absolutely they should, if they are of the mindset to be better than they are today, and if they're in the mindset of doing continuous improvement. Your job is not to use that information against them, but to use that information to help them and help you reduce the cost to your customer. As soon as you use information against them, I can guarantee you they'll give you no more information such as cost breakdown. And you don't have to, except with Toyota and Honda. They do have to, or they are not going to be a supplier. And that is one of the questions asked me. Are you willing to share cost information with us? And if the answer is yes, within reason, because they have to be cautious. And the reason would be they want confidentiality, they want to make sure it's not going back and bite them, and et cetera, et cetera. And if you're not going to do it, you should tell them that. And I can tell you from past experience, when I had my first job at TRW is a company in St. Catharines. Nissan came through, they liked what we did, they liked the product, they liked their quality, they liked their delivery, they liked the quote they held in their hand, and the question was asked to our vice president, are you willing to share cost information with us? And the answer was flat out no. We never got any Nissan business. And most likely that caused part of the demise of the company 22 years later. Okay? They never get Toyota business, they never get Honda business, for the same reason that they gave Nissan, they were not prepared to share cost information. So I have a good friend who's now was the vice president general manager of that company. After I left to go to Honda, he asked me, why is Honda not giving us business? And very simply, Honda knew they were capable. However, they are not committed to continuous improvement, and they're not committed to sharing cost data. Not everyone will, and if it's important to your company as a requirement, then you should make sure you get it. Okay. Some of you, when you talk about cost analysis, your supplier sometimes does not understand the true cost. Everybody in your supply base, you know what the bullwhip effect is. When I order 100 parts to a tier 1 supplier, he makes 150 parts, and then his sub-supplier makes 300 parts, and the one before that makes 450 parts. Remember, I only asked for 100, and there's already 1,000 parts in the system. Everybody buffers everything, including cost. So if the true cost is really $10, then they're going to try and sell it to you for $20, just in case. Everybody puts just in case values in there in case of something happening. You need to weed them away, and the only way you can weed those away and take them away from a cost structure is to say, if there is an extraordinary requirement, I'll help you with it. Meaning, you open the door for them to come to you and say, I've had an issue, I've had a problem. Okay, as opposed to building slush into the system at every level of the organization. That's why it costs so much. Okay, all right. Some companies are unsophisticated. They don't have good cost models. Okay, your job as a buyer is to be as knowledgeable as you can about what the cost is. And again, you've got a comparable. You've got quotes in your hand that say, I've got 3 quotes, one for $10 and 2 for $20. If you had one quote at $10 per part and 2 at $20 per part, one would say the $10 one is wrong because the other 2 most likely are not, because they're consistent, they're close to each other. So you would have to ask the question to the $10 one, what is your cost structure, so that you know that you haven't missed anything? Because ultimately, if they make a mistake in the pricing, they can't keep it up and they'll go out of business. So be careful with that. Okay. TQM, management commitment. When this TQM, this really should be a TQM performance. When you're talking total quality performance, you need to ask the question is, do they have a quality system? And ISO 9000 is the standard, the benchmark for most manufacturing companies. I want to tell you very honestly that just because someone has an ISO 9000 certification, it does not necessarily make them ship a quality product. ISO documents what I do, how I do it, etc., etc. These are my processes. It does not guarantee a quality part. It gives you a better chance of making a quality part, but in many cases, because the customers require you to have ISO 9000, is people have it but do not apply it on a consistent basis in their plants. And I can tell you the best question that you can ask on ISO 9000 when you go to do a supplier visit, you can ask a supplier, you are ISO certified. Ask somebody on the plant floor or someone in the purchasing office, just before your ISO audit, is there a mad scramble in this company to have documents signed off before the auditor comes? And the answer most likely will be yes, because what it says is they do not apply it on a daily basis. They only apply it when the auditor's coming to audit them to make sure all the documentation is up to date. And now they're scrambling to make it up to date. Whereas if they make it part of the daily business, of course there's no scramble. No, it happens as it happens. So be very careful with the words ISO 9000. On this slide you can see the use of MBNQA. That is the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award System in the United States. It's similar to ISO. It's been made redundant by ISO. And by the way, a certification beyond ISO 9000 is called TAS 16949, which is for technical companies. Highly skilled companies use TAS 16949. That is an ISO-based system with a whole bunch of technical requirements on top of it. So TS, in my opinion, is higher than ISO, but both say at least the company has a structure in place to make quality parts. Doesn't mean they're making them, they have a structure in place to make the parts. Okay. Some of my worst suppliers at Honda were ISO companies. Okay. important when you talk about, when you're looking at processes and technology, you want to look at the plant and you want to look at your service that they're providing you and say, are they using the best technology? You know, I don't live in Toronto area. I live in a small community out in the west of Ontario here on Lake Huron. And my plumber, the guy who has to certify my plumbing for my insurance purpose, etc., is only now installing a small computer system. It's not because he's just a single plumber. He's a fairly big company, but he's done everything manually because of an old style. Nothing wrong with not having technology. It just tells you they're not up to date with what they're doing. But as a maker of parts for your company or service that you use, you would like to think they're the highest level within reason, so they can and they do know the current features and the new and updated features and how to do things different than they did them 10 years ago. Okay. On companies like Magna, when you talk about commitment to R&D, research and development, you have to be careful because research and development implies there's a lot of research, meaning scientists working. Magna has a lot of R&D because they have got a significant number of patents in the processes that they build. They're very, very, very good patents, by the way. Very skilled company. But that is also why Magna, when you source them, will be more money than the guy down the street, because they do have engineering resources, test facilities, they have scientists, they have researchers. They develop products, and a company that is called a black box company, and a company that is a black box company cannot make the part for the same price as a white box or non-technical company without testing and R&D and engineers. It is impossible. Even though you may expect it, it can't be done. You have to recognize a highly skilled company has to have high skilled resources, high paid resources, and lots of high paid equipment. That impacts your price. So therefore, don't give a black box, highly technical company a simple make-to-print part, because you will pay through the nose for it. And you don't need a company of that level. You need somebody who can make a good stamping, a good part, but source the supplier with the capability that you need. Okay, don't pay for what you don't need. So that's important to do that. Environmental compliance. I'm not going to get into this because we are not. This is just the fact that everybody is aware of the environment. We should recognize it as customers that you expect your supplier to be environmentally conscious. You can see that when you go through the plant. You can ask them about how they dispose of their oil and their waste. You can go, and I would suggest that this is something you're in the habit of doing. If you go to see a new supplier, you can't do it at Toyota because you're on a little bus tour. But when I go to a supplier, I oftentimes want to start at the beginning of the process. I go to where the materials come into the plant and I follow the process through because it's logical in my mind. But at some point throughout that tour, I will go outside of their facility, particularly the back of the facility, into their yard and look at what they've got out there. Because the plant may look nice and clean and organized inside because they just cleaned it up for you going there. But they had to move that shit somewhere. Usually it's outside. And I can go outside and say, what is all of this? Oh, yeah, we're getting rid of that. Yeah, that's scrap. Oh, this is that. Be very careful that when you go to plant tours, the supplier's trying to make the best impression he can for you. There's nothing wrong with that, but always look beyond to make sure it's just not hidden. Okay? Do you have a recycling management program? If you don't see blue boxes under the desks in their office, they don't recycle. If you go in the plant or go to the cafeteria and there's no blue boxes in there, they are not recycling. It's very simple. You don't need to be an environmental engineer to realize they're not doing it. Look inside a garbage can, you'll see what's in there. Okay? If you want. I don't have to. But also ISO 14000 is the environmental certification. And there's a good chance if they've got ISO 14000 that they probably have all the right things in place. The reason that you need to know what they are environmentally, because if they violate an environmental requirement, they can be shut down. Their operations can be shut down until it's fixed. Again, that means you can't get your parts out if they've been shut down. So please be cautious of the environment. You as a company need to be environmentally compliant, and you can only be environmentally compliant if your suppliers are also environmentally compliant. All right. The responsibility goes right back to where your raw material comes from. You have that responsibility. Financial stability, we talked about that, but what I want you looking at on the next two slides, these are the financial ratios that people use to help understand if a company's financially viable. Again, I don't want you to do this. Please do not memorize these two slides. I will never ask you to give me the formula for liquidity ratios, or I'm not going to do that. That is idiotic. This is the job of your finance people, but this is for the common layperson, such as purchasing. We can understand what these mean and what's an indicator. And again, just looking at the first one, it says current assets. What's your current ratio for liquidity? Current assets divided by current liabilities. You know what an asset is, you know what a liability is. And it tells you it should be greater than 1. It should be greater than 1, but look at averages, because maybe the industry average is 0.8 and the company you're looking at is 0.9. I would say they're better than the average company industry. But one would hope that's a 2.6, a 2.8, 3.2. The higher the number in that answer, the more liquid they are, which means they can pay their bills and they're financially solid. Okay, so you can go through those inventory turnovers. When you ask somebody, what is your inventory turnover, and he tells you, you need to have an idea in your head, what the hell does that mean? And again, inventory turnover, the more turnover they've got, the better they are, the quicker the moving product. So some companies will tell you, I flip my inventory 30 times a year. That's a good number. If somebody says I flip my inventory twice a year, that's not a good number. It means they're sitting holding a lot of inventory. So as much as I don't want you to become accountants, and I won't examine you on this, you need to be aware that the common sense approach to this is, I need to know some of these terms so that when someone mentions it, I should know. Okay? All right? It's important, and here's some. So again, just read through this, but I do not want you to memorize these two. Okay? It's not important for you. You just need to know roughly what they are, and don't be afraid to make and when you're making notes and you go to visit spot and he says my turnover is 10%, maybe that's good, and for an industry that may be completely fine. You may not like it, but nobody in the industry is better, and if they're better than the industry average, it is better than not being there. So it's important to understand what is the industry doing, and you can find out that information all over the place. I also, when it comes to manpower turnover questions, I go back to my HR department and say, what am I looking for when I go to a supplier? What's the type of questions I should be asking? In fact, HR, you can come with me if you wish, and you can ask those questions. And they say, no, I don't have time for that, so here's what you should look for. But as important as a purchaser, you need to be a master of many, many things, because you are going to be the face of your company, walking through facilities, trying to understand, well, should I give this company business or not? Should I increase this company's business or not? Another aspect for you to think about is growth. How much has your company grown in the last 5 years? Very proudly, they will tell you, we have increased our business by 20% every year. That is a tremendous result, by the way. In some cases, double overnight. When a company goes more than 20% a year, 25% a year, you should be concerned, not in the negative sense, but companies can't keep up with that growth, meaning they can't put their systems and their people, you can't put them in place quick enough for that type of growth, more than 25%. All you want to do is have a red flag there that says, ask the next level questions about the turnover, about this, about that, because 20% growth is a phenomenal number when you're talking about the stability of a company, unless it's a electronic company or an internet company. Those are different. But people who are making parts and doing services for you, significant growth will hurt them short term, and they need to have things in place to look after that. And 99% of companies do not put the necessary manpower in place before the growth happens, because they can't guarantee it. Okay, so when you're talking turnover and growth and increasing business, use your brain there, engage your brain quickly, and say, just make sure that the systems are growing and the people are growing in relationship to the business. And you can see that by even just asking somebody in your office, how many hours do you put in a week? Somebody puts in 40 hours a week? It's normal. When somebody says to you, I'm putting in 60 hours a week, that's not normal. So again, use common sense, and I've told you this before, purchasing is a common sense science. You can find a lot of information by a bit of experience and a bit of knowledge. Okay. Look at production control. You have different things you should use. Are they using an MRP system? Are they using PeopleSoft? Are they using, SAP? So again, you should know a little bit about this. I'm not going to go through all these. You can read it. But what is the lead time, and what is an on-time delivery performance? These are all things that you can ask, and the company that you join will have a system set up most likely. You have to follow that. But if you're going to make a dynamic effect on a company, you're going to look at changing or improving the system or enhancing the systems. And that's really what you should be learning now, is you have that ability of purchasing to change the company's bottom line by putting good suppliers in place to do your job. You can change that bottom line. And if the systems are not good for supplier selection, then you should find a way to implement a new idea. As a new buyer for the next 5 years, probably no one will listen when you say, I want to do this different. But maybe someone will. And as you move up into the management role, supervisor to manager to director, it is your job to determine what is good and what is bad. Okay, so therefore, this is what you're trying to do today, is understand that. Okay, e-commerce capability. Everybody should be on EDI now. Everybody should be on EDI, and don't think for a second, sorry, I know you're young people and you want to pay everything by your phone. Your suppliers are not going to pay you by the phone. They're not going to just let you put your money in your bank. You need to make sure it is electronic, but all the necessary controls in place to make sure you get your bills paid on time. Okay. I've had several requests in the last 2 years to have companies, suppliers who says they want the ability to withdraw. Once they ship the product to me, they want the ability to take the money out of my bank automatically. And most companies will never allow that, because now you're allowing an outside source to withdraw money from your account. If they make a mistake, you have to get the money back and fight about it. And so the answer is no. Send me an invoice, electronic invoice. We will match that to the orders received, and if there's a match, we'll pay. Okay, but it's important that you make sure that you have capable systems. There is a reference here of barcoding. Barcoding is a technology we created back in 1978, still very, very prevalent in the industry. And you see in Amazon reading barcodes all over the place. It is an old system that works very well, and it's definitely more sophisticated now than it used to be. The use of RFIDs is very common. That's those little beeper things that they put in every product now that used to be just in expensive products that say when you leave a store, it beeps and tells you you've stolen something. That's really where it started from. Now there's RFIDs in just about every product you buy, even cheap $1, $2, $3 items, because of theft's a big thing. But RFIDs can also contain a huge amount of information that can automatically populate your system. Okay, when you're talking electronic and e-commerce, you want the supplier to give you the information into your system that so it's can put everything in as it's received, all the information can be there. And a lot of suppliers use, and definitely automotive suppliers they say, we need you to send me an ASN, an advanced shipping notice. And Leanne Carver should be covering this for you as you do your logistics. An advanced shipping notice tells your customer, particularly an automotive customer or a high volume producing customer, I'm shipping you the following items. And if I've ordered 1,000 and they're only shipping 800, the ASN will say 800. It will not say 1,000. The ASN reflects actually what they're shipping and what the documentation says. Okay. With that advanced shipping notice, most people ignore them until there's no parts, and you realize they told you I only shipped 800. It's your buyer's job, your job, to say, I've got my ASNs, I've checked off the numbers, they all reflect what I ordered, therefore I'm in good shape. But if something is different, you should be picking up the phone at this point and saying to your supplier, why are you sending me 800 parts when I ordered 1,000? What is the plan to get me my other 200 parts? Because again, he should be shipping you what you order. All right, and ASNs help you do that. EFT, you do EFT now on your phones, you do different things and paying your bills. Again, your suppliers can do that today. But again, it should all be electronic. Companies are not writing checks anymore. Okay, all right. Does the supplier utilize email? What a ridiculous comment to put on a slide. Of course they are. For the most part, because I still have 2 suppliers at Algoma who are not on an email system, and it's very difficult to deal with them, but they are unique in the product that they make that I cannot find the product anyplace else. So whether I like it or not, I got to suck it up. But make sure they're capable and that your systems talk to each other, etc., etc. So run tests, make sure things are right. But again, you should know that based on your own company. Supplier-based strategies. We talked last week on the sourcing strategy. The Honda document's got a sourcing strategy on it, and as you make your sourcing decisions, strategy is very important, because the strategy is a high-level thinking that can override the results on a piece of paper. So the results say that supplier A should get the business based on QCD, but the fact that if your strategy calls for you need 2 capable suppliers and you only have 1, then maybe it makes sense that somebody else should get the business. Strategy will override numbers, or at least cause you to question what I should do. Okay, and primarily strategies come from the higher offices, your CEO, your directors. They create the strategy. Our job is to follow that strategy. Okay, and if I've asked you to find 3 suppliers in this commodity, and as your director, and you don't do that, and you keep giving the business to the 1 person, I'll be somewhat upset, because I directed you to create competition and put 3 suppliers in place, 2 suppliers in place. That is why strategy is important. Okay, it's an overused term, but it's important, if there is a strategy, that you know what your company strategy is and that you apply the strategy, or at least have the conversation as to why you're not applying it. In many cases, your logic is correct, but the strategy is set as a guideline that you should be following. And if you don't want to follow it for whatever reason, at least tell your director, your boss, your manager why you shouldn't do it, and get his consensus before you do it. If you want to keep your job, I suggest you do that. Okay. Look for the potential of long-term relationships. Your first discussion board or blog was on traditional versus contemporary. Traditional are not short-term based. They just tend to be more not as long-term based as other companies. Ford and Chrysler and General Motors, when they source parts for their cars, are looking at 5-year windows. They are not sourcing parts for 1 year. The life cycle of a car is 5 years. The life cycle of a truck is 7 years. So when they source somebody, they're looking at 7-year volume. A lot of money. A lot of money when you look at that. Okay. And they will keep that business for that 5 years, regardless, because you can't afford to retool someone else unless you have to. So make sure that when you look at potential long-term relationships, your supplier is a willing partner. GM tried to force all suppliers to think of this type of collaborative relationship, but they did that for their own good and their own good only, and very quickly the supplier realized that and refused to participate in some GM programs because it was being forced up there, forced down the throat. So you got to be careful. If you're going to be contemporary and you're going to build a long-term relationship with a supplier, they need to be willing to trust you that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Okay. And every time I see can the supplier comment like, is the supplier willing to participate? Is the supplier willing to commit the necessary resources? Will the supplier commit to improving the cost levels? Will supplier do this? I want you to take those questions and I want you to flip them around. You as a customer, as a buyer, are you willing to participate in a long-term relationship? Are you willing to make the necessary commitments and resources to do that? And are you as a buyer willing to work with the suppliers in the area of cost improvement? If you can't answer those questions of yourself, why should a supplier answer them to you if you don't know the answers to them? Meaning, what are you going to do, Mr. Buyer? What are you going to do as my customer to help me when I need that help. Because it is not a one-way side of the story. It is a two-way relationship and is equally powerful both ways. That is what you have to realize with a contemporary organization. It has to be reciprocal, or it's not. It becomes a dictatorship. Okay? So every supplier can tell you yes to all of these questions. Part of your job, again, in your evaluation is to determine, is it really true? Okay? Right, so again, you can go through these slides. I want you to jump down here. I want to talk about this slide here. You should be able to see on your slide, it says initial supplier evaluation. Okay? I'm going to give you an assignment, and I want you to create, and I'm going to give you a set of circumstances, and I want you to create a initial supplier evaluation document. And you can see here, I think I'm going to make it, that there's a whole bunch of different things. You can read through it on your slide. You'll notice there's categories: quality, system management capability, cost structure, etc. All of these 7 items here, 8 items here, 9 items here, I can classify as QCDD. Every one of them can be classified as QCDDM. Therefore, I still like the idea of simplifying to say you're going to create a QCDDM document that evaluates one supplier versus the other. Okay, and so what this does is the Honda one is a little unique because it's got all the criteria on there, but it compares supplier to supplier to supplier. Okay, this is just a document for the supplier. If you've got 3 suppliers, you then have to take that information and summarize it and decide who's your best supplier. Okay, but somehow you've got to put things in place. What I do not want you to do, please make a note. How many people are on our call today? Just a second. Hold on a second. Okay, we've got 14 participants here today. So what I want you to do, what I want you to make sure you do, and I'll make sure I go back to the. Hopefully, it's still on your screen. What I want you to do here is to make sure that a weighting is important. So you look at the criteria, again, using the concept of QCDD, and the Honda document is very simple. I'm going to show you an example in a minute, what I did this morning for you, and I'll give it to you. Okay, is that I don't want to overcomplicate it. If I've got a tie, I've got 2 suppliers who are close, and I can't decide, then I can give them more evaluation criteria. But what I'm trying to do is to say, based on something, in Honda's case, Toyota's case, it is very clearly QCDD is 4 areas of criteria. They compare the suppliers in those areas by a simple method of 1, 2, 3, 4, which means and I'll show you an example of that. You can use weighting to differentiate that. Maybe your company puts more weight on costs. So maybe that should be 30% of the value, 40% of the value. Maybe your organization is a highly critical component, so you need to put a higher emphasis on quality. At Honda and Toyota, we have equal weighting across the board on quality, cost, delivery, and development. They all weigh the same in our evaluation because we believe they're all important to us. Okay? So this example talks about weighting them, which I'm okay with. This first column here, weight, but keep it at the first. This idea of subweight is just a ludicrous bullshit comment. You're putting yourself into the nth degree of detail when you do this. You should ever need to subweight something. If you have to weight it, that's okay. But if you don't need to weight it, then take it at face value. But I want you to look at this as an example. This is not, I think, a more complex example, a more detailed one than I'm willing to show you, and I'll take you to that now. But I want you to think about supplier evaluation as a simple exercise. You will see this in your in an assignment. You will see it on your final exam. So this is worthwhile taking time to learn it properly, because you will see it again, and you should see it as you go into your new life as a buyer. Okay, let me switch windows for you to Excel, and I'll show you what I did this morning. Okay, as an example, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, you should be able to see an Excel spreadsheet on your screen about now. Can somebody confirm you've got an Excel spreadsheet on your page? And it should say at the top, complex.
Yes.
Right, so you've got that on your screen, all right? The slide that I just showed you has got complex weightings and different things. What I've done here for you very simply is created an evaluation document, okay? I'm giving you some basic, I'm your buyer, I'm coming to you as a supplier, and I need some information. So what I'm going to tell you up here at the top is telling you the annual volume. What volume am I going to buy from you, okay? In this particular case, I'm saying I'm going to buy 400,000 a year. I'm telling you the program life is 5 years. The car life is 5 years, so therefore you expect this volume for the next 5 years, okay? This type of volume. Then I'm looking for, there's 4 companies that I'm going to consider: ABC Stamping, TRE Stamping, New Delhi Stamping, and East Coast Stamping. And you'll notice one's in Mississauga, one's in Newmarket, one's in India, and one is in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Then I'm giving you basic information about them. You know, are they an existing supplier or are they a new supplier? Are they a preferred supplier, meaning they're your highest level, or are they approved? Or are they new? Are they capable? Are they, what are they? So, and then I'm going to give you some basic information. Here's the cost that they have quoted, right? See that? There's 4 different costs. One, if you're a price company, jump to this one in India and say, holy shit, I should buy it from India because it's $35 versus $56 from ABC. If that's true, and we'll soon find that out, right? But you see, so then I'm telling you there's also logistics cost. And I want you to take that logistics cost, because there is a logistics cost, because it is always FOB their plant. Usually 99%, 90% of the time it will be FOB their plant. You have the responsibility to ship the parts to yourself. And the reason you do that is because they're your responsibility. Sometimes you can go FOB your plant, and again, in your logistics course, you know the difference. FOB in your plant means that they have the responsibility to get them to you. So when the truck crashes and those 30 engines it's carrying go down the gully, it's their responsibility. And that's all fine and good, except you don't have 30 engines and you can't replace them very quickly. So you want to sometimes control your own logistics. But essentially, I'm giving you basic history, quality history. PPM is a method of measuring that. The lower the number, the better. 150 ppm is better than 300. 100 ppm is better than 3,000. 3,000 ppm, although not good, is better than 30,000. Okay, so you want to be able to do that. I want to know the delivery history of and this measures as an on-time delivery. So this is basic information I will give you for your assignment. But what I want you to look below is, how did I analyze that? And I looked at here: quality, cost, delivery, and development. I weighted like Honda, 25%. I then looked at the quality numbers, and I just copied them from down here. I look at these quality numbers, okay? And essentially, when I look at them, I'm going to rate this. There's 4 suppliers here. So therefore, I'm going to rate 4 is the best result, 1 is the least, the lowest result. So in the case of quality, I'm going to make that a 4 because that is the best, right? This is a 3. This is a 2. And this is, no, it's not a 2. It's 3, 2, yes, and this is a 1. Okay? All right. So what I've done there is very simply put 4 numbers in place, not doing any calculations, just looking at numbers. Says this supplier, ABC Stamping, has got the best quality, therefore, out of the 4, he's rated 4. The New Delhi supplier has got the highest number of ppm, therefore they're a 1. All right. Simple. It didn't take a monkey to do that, a rocket scientist. No calculations, no deep analysis, just a basic fact of life. Total cost. What I've done here now is this total cost is not $56 because there's a 4% logistics cost. Therefore, this is the total cost of $58.24. All right. So that is the highest, as you see. So that's going to be a 1 because they're the highest price. This is the best. That's a 4. This is second best. That's a 3. This is a 2. And this is a 1. Again, high to low. Simple, doesn't get much easier than that. Delivery, 99%, 100%, 95, and 100. 2 out of 100, that's the best, so therefore they both have to be 4. Okay? Therefore, this makes this a 2 or a 3. I'll make it a 3. Let's just see what happens at 3. And this makes this a 2 then, because again, just one behind each other. All right? Now, when you look at the development, good, so-so, none, good. So again, I've got 2 good results. There should be 4. Again, it's very difficult to measure development, but essentially that means so-so is definitely a 3, and this is a 2. All right, so very simply, in about 1 minute, 2 minutes, I can evaluate the raw data of the supply base I've done. If I make this, and you would know if you go back to the Honda document, it's very similar to this, just complex. But essentially, I can tell now, if I look at a simple calculation, 12, 11, 9, 14, based on simple calculation that says that I should give this company, East Coast Stamping, this business, because they are better overall than anybody else. Okay? Anybody disagree with me out there? See how simple that was? If I use the weighted values, it just takes it down, but essentially they're still the best because they're all weighted the same. So it really doesn't tell me anything. But if I change these weights, this will change. Okay, let's go back and say I want to make, let's make this 0.4 for quality. I want to make it 0.3 for cost. And I want to make it, which means I can only go 1.5. And let's say 0.15. It has to add up to 1. Okay, and it tells you, it comes back and looks at it, and it looks like even though I changed the weighting, this company, East Coast, is still the winner. They would get the business. On paper, now your strategy comes into, or your logic and now your thinking comes into place, because ABC is an existing supplier. You already know them. All the systems are set up. They're already existing. They are a preferred supplier, so you should be going to them even though they're better, unless your strategy says you want competition. TRE is a, and by the way, notice here is black box, grey box, white box, and black box. That could be an evaluation criteria because this is a complex assembly. The word complex implies you need to be you should be a black box because it requires design and testing, okay? Design and testing up here. So you should be a black box unless you're a very good grey box. And that means grey box can do most of the things black box can, but can't do it all, such as, down here to its test capability. Test capability for black box is in-house, test capability for a grey box is outsourced. So, but they still can do it. Whereas, a white box can't do anything. And this supplier is a white box supplier, which means they're a simple supplier. Simple capability. Do you want to give complex auto assembly to a white box supplier in India? The answer is no. And the reason being is that the lowest capability supplier in that group, doesn't matter what the price is, doesn't matter if the price is $20. So let's go and make it $20. It's now $20 for the cost of that. It doesn't matter what that is. I do not, and I'm not willing to put my business there on a complex assembly on a new supplier who's a simple supplier with no design or test capability.
Can I add about the quality history?
Yep.
Why you choose the lowest one?
And I didn't choose the lowest one. I chose the best supplier overall.
Yeah. So, like PPN, 150, you evaluate 4 out of 4. So I don't understand like the number. What does it mean?
No, weighting. Are you talking the weighting number?
Yeah, like the quality history.
This evaluation number, yeah? Right. So when I change these values, let me go back. Let's pretend I didn't change it.
No. I just want to ask, like, because like you choose the lowest number is 4 out of 4. So what does it mean, like 150, 200, 300, 400? So I still don't understand.
Because in quality, low number is good. 0 ppm is much better than 100 ppm. So remember, when you're talking profits, the bigger the number, better. You're talking quality, the smaller the number is better. Quality numbers are always small, meaning the best supplier has got 0 ppm. The worst supplier has got 100,000 ppm. The bigger the number of ppm, the less quality it is. I know it's an inverse thinking, but quality is always measured, not always, but the lower number is better in quality. ppm is a measure. High ppm says you make more errors per million parts than someone who has a 0 ppm. So that is why under quality, 150 got 4, because 4 is good. Like, 4 is the highest score. So they are the best of these 4 suppliers. This 150 ppm is the best number. It is better than 200. It is better than 400. It's better than 300. That's why it's simple to do. That's the best, they get a 4. The second best gets a 3. The third best gets a 2. The fourth best gets a 1.
I have a question.
Yes.
So even though the East Coast Stamping is the best supplier through the evaluation, we're still going to choose ABC Stamping because it's our existing supplier.
Let me finish.
Develop them?
Not necessarily. This is what the numbers show. What my decision might be, in this case, unless there's some reason, I haven't said there's any strategy here, but I may not do this. Your strategy may come into place here. This tells you who is your best selection based on numbers. Now your logic and your requirements of your company, your strategy may override that. For example, if ABC is 100% of my business, they don't, because I've already got one here. But do I need another supplier when I've got ABC and TRE? Do I want to bring the supplier in? Honestly, I would, because they're good results and they're very capable. And the only thing going against them is they're down in Nova Scotia. They're further away. If I needed a third supplier, that'd be my choice. It depends on what, in this case, your strategy. But all I'm trying to show you here is the evaluation method is simple. It doesn't need to be complex to get the raw number. And this is just a raw number. It says on paper, East Coast Stamping is the best supplier overall for this job if I want to give it to them. The question is, do I give it to them? I don't know. It depends. Again, for your assignment, I will give you strategy that you have to take into account. Because very quickly, someone who's looking at price is the best thing would pick this supplier. I'm looking at a complex part. There's no way I'm going to India. Absolutely no way. But my boss may say, I don't care what you think, Jim. I need the best price to make this part work. Therefore, we're going to India. Okay? So, again, this just gives you a quick way to put down the numbers. You'll notice the highest cost is the lowest value, because high is not good when you're talking cost. Low is good when you're talking cost, right? Same as in quality. Delivery, a high number is good. 100% is better than 99. It's better than 95. 100% is the best rating. So you have to know when you're looking at quality and delivery and cost is what way does the arrow go? We're not talking profits, we're talking cost. Therefore, we're trying to get the best cost we can. Therefore, the best cost should have the higher valuation. Okay? So in this case, this would say, given what I know here, I know nothing else other than this supplier would get this business based on this and this basic summary, because they are the best. Now I'll look at this saying, but they're not a current supplier, right? They're a new supplier. Do I want to do that? So another thing I did here, I looked at the total cost, the total program cost, which is 400,000 times the dollar value times the 5 years, and it says this is $23 million. This is $20 million over 5 years, $21 million. Is it worth $2 million to bring on a new supplier? Again, it's a decision you have to make. By raw data, it would say yes, you should do this. So right now, based on this data, you would come to me and say, based on the data, Jim, East Coast Stamping should get this business, because they are the best overall, given the data that you've got. Now, would I just give them $20 million of business just because you said so? No. I would now ask you as a buyer, go to East Coast and understand what they're doing very quickly, and let's have a compare here. I'd also talk to this supplier here, by the way, and I'd say to ABC, who's my preferred supplier, you're not going to get this business because you're out to lunch. You're too high, and we need to do something about cost. There's nothing wrong with that discussion. I'm going to tell my buyer to, and I don't think I would go here. I don't think I would go to the grey box. I don't have to go to the grey box. I think I can get this price down. That's my logic. But most likely, if I'm looking for a new supplier, this might be the one I would use. My point is this little simple 5-line analysis is quicker and better than the one that they show you in your PowerPoint slide. So when you do your assignment,
So I just want to
okay.
I just want to add that in the supply chain management, the new one, so they build a long range ship with the preferred supplier. So should we bring this, like, should we like have the information to negotiate with ABC Stamping about the unit cost and the commitment about delivery history, or should we go to the new supplier?
Well, again, this is I can't tell you that unless I tell you what my strategy is or what the company strategy is or what you want to do. There's no question, just raw data says the East Coast Stamping Company is the highest score. I now have to then, as a buyer, because it's not about numbers, it's about using your brain, and I don't mean this derogatory. We need to then say, what is my strategy? What's the company strategy saying about bringing another supplier in? Because next week you could be another one that's cheaper. Do you bring a fourth and fifth one in? Is the strategy might be here, I need 3 capable suppliers. I've got 2. Therefore, is this a good opportunity to bring a third one on? Yes. Okay. Would I go that route if I'm looking for a third supplier? Yes, I would. Would I use this to make ABC and TRE better? Absolutely, I would, without disclosing this information. This is confidential information. I can't share this with you, but I can go to my 2 existing suppliers and saying, neither of you are going to get this business because you're not the best overall QCDD. A good supplier, such as ABC or TRE, would then say, what do I need to do different to get this? And most likely they will come back with a second price. Would I allow them to do that? Sure, I would. That's part of negotiation. But this is the baseline condition that says, I've got a $52 cost out there. He's $58. He's 10% high. He's black box, and so is this a black box. I'm comparing apple to apple, a black box to black box. So why is one higher than the other? So the answer is, depending on your strategy, you make a decision. But right now, you would have a case in point to come to me as your director and say, based on what information you've got here, which is not a lot, I would choose this supplier because he's got the best score, QCDD score. Okay.
Sir, I just have a question. Could you repeat how you got the program cost again?
Yes. Now, you're a third-year student, Saman, in a college program. All I did was take the volume, 400,000 per year, times 5 years, times the dollar value to get the number. This is not a complex calculation. Program cost is, here's the program life, 5 years. So therefore the total program means the whole life of the program is this quantity per year times 5 years times this price gets that.
That's why I was confused, because when I multiply those 3, I get like 112 million for some reason. When I multiply...
So we're done. Look at, highlighted the calculation.
Oh, sorry, the 58.
5824, which is the unit cost plus logistics. So line 12 and line 10 are both cost related. So again, you have to take the total cost, right? So the total cost is 5824 times 400,000 units per year times 5 years adds up to 23 million.
When I multiply 400,000 by 5824, that's the number I get. It doesn't. I don't even put the 5 years in there. That's weird.
Oh, hold on. 22. Ah, you're right. Absolutely right. So
You're
that's the
adding it,
annual
you're
cost.
not
That's the annual
multiplying it.
cost. You're right. That should all be times 5, right?
So we are multiplying all three of them.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you very much. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a simple calculation. I did it wrong. But yes, times 5. That doesn't, still doesn't, because this is saying, yeah, so it's right. This is the cost per year, 400,000 times that. So you're right. This is the cost, the program cost. Yes, you're right, that's a man. So forget that, Colin. I'll correct that one before I give it to you. But yes,
Sir, quick question.
yes.
Can you click on the formula again? In the formula, what are you adding? It says plus something.
So this is D22. So you go back to the D22, which is the 58. So it's D28 is the price times the quantity plus the program life. What is not? Yeah, you're right. It's not I3. Nope. I don't know. That's times I3. This is what's wrong. This one's wrong here. You guys are on your game today. Thank you. I think that's times. Nope. That's better. Okay, now it's right. So what it's saying is I'm taking the $58 times the 400. So $58 here times the 400 times I3, which is 5. Now the reason, you know the reason the dollars are there? The dollar signs makes it an absolute number, and this has to be an absolute number also.
Hi, Professor. Can I have a question?
Hold on, please. Right, okay. Yes, question.
So, in that, do we also calculate the logistic cost,
Yes, absolutely.
the program cost?
Yes.
So do we usually add in the formula? Because I don't see it in the formula.
No, look, stop there. This $58 here, this $58 is the $56 plus logistics.
So it's already included.
Yeah, okay. That's why I called it total cost. And again, what I'm only trying to explain to you is this is a simple way of doing things, but you need to make sure your costs are included because, again, I would tell you in your assignment, FOB, their plant. You should know as a purchaser, you should know that means the cost is mine. Therefore, I have to include it. You can't ignore that cost because look at the cost over here. In India, it's 40% more to ship it from India. And that's a good number, meaning I know it costs 40% to ship something from India. So it doesn't matter if it's cheaper, I'm going to add 40% to get it here in Canada. Okay, so that's why you have to go total cost is the price of the product is one number, but I've also got a logistics number here, and that's why if both of them are cost, you have to then say total cost is this, right? So if I click on this, it tells you those two numbers, okay? So you're good question, but this number is part plus logistics. This number here is part plus logistics. So in your good point is in your assignment, you're going to look for, is there any additional costs? And I don't want you to invent costs. If they're not listed in the example, then you don't have to worry about them. But in this case, I've listed both costs, therefore you need to take them into account. I could put a quality cost in here also, by the way, and say there's a cost for me to deal with this new DLI stamping because I have to inspect 100% of the parts to make sure they're good. And it would cost me money to do that. So all this is saying is simple analysis tells you who the right supplier would be based on data, based on this data, because they win the overall QCDD, and it's not even close. This is not close, 3.5 compared to 3. I would have a hard time not accepting this. In fact, I would be tempted to say that potentially I may bring this supplier on board and let this one go if I was a traditional purchaser. So all it's saying is there's a simple way to make your evaluation. Okay, so Taz has asked me, can we get the formulas posted? No, because then I'm doing your assignment for you. So you should be learning as you go along here. The fact you're in class today as the 14 people who are here should have an advantage over the ones who don't. But yes, I'll post them to show you what I'm doing. Okay, how about that? I'll give you this document and you can go from them. Okay? All right? Yeah, I'm not doing your assignment for you, but you need to learn to think about it. And you're right. I understand you can't see it here, but you need to think about what's the true number. Total cost includes all costs getting, and I already said that in your lecture, that's your cost called landed cost. How do I get my product to me? Because one way or the other, I'm paying this cost. Whether I like it or not, they can put it in the piece price, but I'm paying it. I would actually rather be outside the piece price because then it gives me an opportunity to improve it. If it's buried in the piece price, I can't see it. Okay, so the more detailed cost that I've got as a buyer, as a director, the more I can see opportunity, as opposed to one big number. I can ask them to break this number down. Break this number down and tell me what it is. And in fact, my philosophy is I want to know the breakdown. What is the labor content? What is the machine rate? What is the material cost? What is the shipping cost? What is this? What is that? Because every time they give me more detail, it gives me an opportunity to work with my supplier to reduce that cost. Okay? One big number, just an all-inclusive number, is never good for you as a buyer. You need to understand the cost breakdown, if they will give it to you. And if not, then you deal with the number you've got. Does that make sense? Okay, these are good questions, by the way. And again, I apologize for my calculations were not quite right. So I'll update this, and what I will do is send you this spreadsheet as an example. I don't want to see this coming back to me as your assignment, but I'm going to send this to you as an example because you can click it and you can see what they are. I'll double check all the formulas, make sure they're correct. But essentially the bottom line is that here is a simple method of evaluating 4 suppliers and the 4 suppliers, and you can say based on the data this is the answer. As soon as I put strategy on top of this is going to change, potentially. But right now, this supplier is the best supplier. And you should be giving them the business based on this analysis. Does anybody disagree with me?
Nope.
Okay, all right. So, Taz, for your benefit, because I know you're a simple person who want me to give you that calculation, I will give the students a calculation so you know how my logic is there. But remember, strategy has a big, important role to play because you as a buyer need to do what your company has directed you to do, unless you convince me otherwise. And $2 million, so this is more than $2 million because this is now $16 million, $2 million a year. This is more and more. I would think I'd be willing to go because if I take that over 5 years, that becomes a $10 million saving. Yep. So $12 million savings. Why wouldn't they do that? Logically, you would argue with me, you should do this, Jim, regardless of your strategy, and I'm more likely to agree with you if you did, but depend on the strategy. All right. So that's the way you look at this. This decision is worth $12 million, $13 million. I would probably go this way. Okay, but again, when I give you the example, it'll be something similar to this. It'll be similar detail up here, maybe a bit more detail. But this is just data. Doesn't matter. You have to take this information and try and transpose it into some chart that helps you. Now you'll notice there's 10 lines of data and there's only 4 lines of here. Again, you're trying to simplify it and say, based on this result, this is what we should do. That's what I would recommend you do, Mr. Phillips. We should go source East Coast stamping. And I would agree. And providing I can afford to keep, because you have to keep this supplier, and I'm keeping this supplier, they exist. Right? So we're going to add this potential supplier to it if you're right and the strategy says you can do it. Okay? Very important that you use your brain. I've told you from day one, purchasing is a thinking job. It is never cut and dry. It is never black and white. It is a job that you have to think from different perspectives. So not only do you have to think about QCDD, I'm now adding to that layer, you have to understand the strategy that your company determines. Because ultimately, that's going to play into this. Okay? More questions?
Sir, I have a couple questions. On Grade Center, I noticed that the weighted total you changed. So is it now 3 assignments instead of 2?
I've
Do you know?
listed 3 in case I need a third one. What I'll do there at the end of the day, the 30% that's been set aside for 20%, 30%.
Assignments, 30. It was 30.
I'm just looking now. Major assignments is 30%. It's still going to be 30%, whether it's 2 assignments or whether it's 3 assignments. The trouble with Grade Center is I've got to put it into place to correct it, because I noticed some of the things, because of the one blog was popped out of there and I graded it outside of it, it kind of screwed things up, so I had to tweak it. But the assignments is still 30%. It will be most likely 2 assignments, because I think the third assignment may fall to OPM 620. It still will be 2. Then I'll just adjust it back to 15%. Okay.
Okay, sure.
All right.
And then the other question I had is, do you know if the final exam will be cumulative, or will it be just the second half of the course?
It will definitely be primarily second half, but I will pull you back into the first half, because chapter 4 is just as important as chapter 7, for example. So absolutely, I will bring. It will be not cumulative, meaning the whole book. I will tell you, focus on the second half, with chapter 4 heavily weighted also potentially.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. Any other questions? All right. At this point, I'm going to call it a wrap for the day. I apologize for not being in class today because of weather. We will plan to be a live class next Thursday where we'll go over your midterms. The average on the midterm is 72%. Probably not a bad score. The lack of information on the biggest problem you've got is people think that a 10-point question, I can make 4 bullet points and say, here's my answer. It's not worth 10 points to me. You need to learn to give me some more thought process. We'll talk about it in detail next week. I'll make any adjustments, and I am always willing to make adjustments to the better, should I be erred in my judgment. 2 or 3 of you need to think clearly about your writing style. I can guarantee you that 3 of you are losing marks by your other professors on your final exams if they can't read your writing. They are not going through it. The reason being is we have 1 day to mark our final exams, essentially. You've got to get them done quickly, get them in so that the system can accumulate up for your final grades. Professors are not going to read through. I had to read some of your questions, your answers 3 times to try and get the gist of what you were saying. And I can tell you now, most professors will not do that in the final exam. Take time to slow down and make it legible. It is worth marks to you, in my opinion. Again, it's just my opinion. All right, but overall, wasn't bad. I thought some people would do better than they did. I was happy with some of the results. So again, use information. Go back and put the information that I've posted. It may change next week if you can show me it deserves more, and we'll change it if need be. But you post that into your improvement graph, and you should know where you are compared to your target. And then look back at the action items you said you would do and ask yourself the question, if I'm doing this, first of all, am I doing what I said I'm doing? If the answer is no, then you need to start doing it. This is not a game. I'm trying to make your marks better so that you will learn a skill that you'll be able to use as you leave college and make a good job and do a good job in your career. You already know there's a gap there, then you need to close the gap. And you need to close the gap by changing something. Now, most people committed to spending more time studying. It's already been a week now, 2 weeks since then. I need to ask you the question, are you recording your improved study time, and have you actually done it? And if the answer is yes, that's great. Thank you very much. And your results will show. I can guarantee you they'll show. But if you haven't, I need to ask you, your plan's not worth a shit. And therefore, how are you going to improve your marks? And maybe it's not necessary for you to improve the marks, but please look at it now. I'm trying to learn you a skill that will help you do your purchasing job to the best of your ability. It is not just an exercise. It's not just an assignment. It's a life skill that you can learn and apply. And if you do apply it properly, you'll be much, much better off in your career for the next 30 years than you will if you don't do it. It's just my tip to you as a professional to future professionals. Believe me when I say it will make a huge difference in your career. Huge difference in your career. You need to learn it. It's like any skill. You need to learn it by doing it over again and over again and over again until you're comfortable with the concept. All right? So next week in class, hopefully, depending on weather, but I'm sure it's not going to be too bad. Today was just a bad situation in London, and that provides a barrier between me and you, and so therefore I appreciate you being online. I will post both this lecture online and last week's lecture, so it's there for you. I will give you the assignment, and I'll give you a couple of weeks to do it, but I'd like you to think about sourcing based on what we talked about today. Okay. The other thing I have to ask you, if you're not reading your text, and I think that is why I'm seeing low marks, because obviously my questions required a bit more knowledge than the PowerPoint slides. I do not examine you to the PowerPoint level. I examine you to the textbook. If you're not reading now, that's part of your situation, why the marks are not maybe where you want them to be. You need to read your text. The details are there. I can't go over every detail with you, but they're there. And I think part of the problem is we're not reading our text, or you don't have a text. Your choice. Okay? All right? So thank you very much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you in class next week. We will go over the midterms, and then we'll start the next lecture will be on ethics. Very easy lecture. Okay? All right? Last chance for questions. If not, yes, Daz. You have a question? Nope. All right. Okay. Don't forget that. Oh, by the way, on your Toyota discussion board, we now have 120 entries. Very good. I'm going through most of them now. I've read them once, and now I have to go back and mark them, make comments. Actually, very happy with what I see. Those are important to you to continue to strengthen your blog and the discussion board. There's a couple of issues that's popped up that I'll deal with, and but other than that, I like what I'm seeing, and I do appreciate your efforts. It's going to give you good marks, and that's really what I'm trying to accomplish with your discussion boards. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I'm going to log off, and if need be, send me emails, questions, whatever you need to do, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.